Excellent. We'll make a start. So thank you for showing an interest today and coming along to this candidate and agent briefing. Today we'll be covering a number of topics as set out there. So there are about 40 slides. I'll try and move through pretty quickly so we can get to the Q&A part of the presentation section. The briefing, as it notes, has been updated to cover changes enacted by the Elections Act, and these also include voter ID requirements and changes to the rules around postal vote handling and secrecy. We'll put some additional information into the chat for you as we go through. If you do have any questions, do please either wait to the end or you can put them into the chat and my colleagues here will have a look through them. So a starting place is who's who, and I thought it'd be helpful just to give you a bit of a rundown, because these are county elections, of who some of the key officers involved in the process will be. Pat Flaherty, as the Chief Executive for the County Council, is also the returning officer for Staffordshire and will have ultimate responsibility for the county elections on the 1st of May. Gordon Moore, that's myself, the Chief Executive of Newcastle under Lyme Borough Council. I'm acting as the Deputy County Returning Officer for this election, the Electoral Registration Officer for Newcastle, and I'll be responsible for all of the returning officer functions in the Newcastle divisions for this election. With me tonight are Anthony Harold, who's our Head of Legal and Democratic Services and one of my Deputy Returning Officers here in Newcastle, and also Stephanie Price, our Elections Manager and another Deputy Returning Officer within Newcastle. And Steph and the team are supported by Annette Bailey, Chris Booth, who's with us here tonight, and Julie Colclough, who between them are our small but perfectly formed elections team here in Newcastle. So the timetable for the county elections is as set out here. It really starts with the publication of notice of election on the 25th of March. Nominations then commence from the following day, and those nominations will take place between 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. On Monday to Friday, so weekdays, up until the close of nominations at 4 p.m. on the 2nd of April 2025. All this information will be included on the notice of election, but it's important to note those dates and times. So 26th of March, 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. Monday to Friday. That closes at 4 p.m. on the 2nd of April. So after that, nominations will not be able to be received. And if you can please make contact with the Elections Office, we'll give you those contact details if you don't already have them, but hopefully you do as you're here tonight. And you'll need to contact the Elections Office to make an appointment for nominations. The timetable also covers any existing absent voters. Absent voters will need to get in touch with us to make changes to their existing arrangements. And the two deadlines for that are the 14th of April for existing arrangements changes by post, and the 23rd of April for proxy votes. And we'll cover emergency proxies on the next slide. So the deadline for applications for new proxies is the 23rd of April. Deadlines for applications for new voter authority certificates on the same day. Appointment of county and polling agents, likely to be yourselves, on the 24th of April, running up until polling day. For voter authority certificates, the deadline to request these is 5 p.m. on the 23rd of April. Emergency proxies are available if the elector falls ill or where the elector's occupation, service or employment means they cannot go to the polling station. But only if this is only the case if the deadline for applications on the 23rd of April has passed, i.e. it has to be after the 23rd of April. Applications must be made by 5 o'clock on polling day. New provisions for voter ID now means anyone whose eligible photo ID is lost, stolen, destroyed, or damaged after the deadline to apply for a voter authority certificate is passed can still vote by emergency proxy. We also have arrangements for temporary voter authority certificates up until the close of the poll. Importantly, although we'll all be building up to the 1st of May, the timetable runs through to the returns process as set out there up to the 6th of June. And it's important for agents to remember those deadlines for expenses as well. So, nominations. I think it's worth highlighting that the nominations process is absolutely critical for candidates and agents to get right. If a nomination form isn't submitted by the deadline and it isn't filled in correctly, or it isn't filled in correctly, it won't be accepted. It can't be accepted. At the point that a nomination is submitted, I will be accepting the statements made on that nomination at face value, as the law requires, except for anything which may be likely to mislead or confuse electors, or we consider to be obscene or offensive. I do have to stress that the responsibility for accuracy of completion of the nomination form rests with you, not with me, but with you. So due to the importance of getting this right, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this. So firstly, looking at qualifications, who can stand for election? The qualification to be a registered elector is an ongoing one, so it must be satisfied for the duration of the term of office should a candidate be elected. It's really important to mark all of the qualifications that the candidate satisfies when completing the consent to nomination. And I also wanted to draw your attention to that second bullet point around qualifying EU citizens. So there have been changes regarding EU citizens and EU citizens with retained rights as part of the Elections Act 2022. And that's come in since obviously the last county elections. So qualifying EU citizen in this case relates to countries the UK currently holds bilateral treaties with, which are Denmark, Luxembourg, Poland, Portugal, and Spain. And retained rights refers to those who are legally in residence in the UK on or before 31st of December 2020. So if that applies to your candidate, please make sure that those qualifications do apply before you submit the nomination. So as well as the qualifications there are also disqualifications. This list is not intended to be comprehensive, and we'd ask that candidates should read the Commission's guidance for further information on disqualifications, which is available on the Electoral Commission website, alongside further information on standing. And certainly that's a starting point for anyone who hasn't read it to go onto that part of the website and make sure it's been read and understood. If candidates are in any doubt about whether they are disqualified, they must do everything that they can to check that they are not disqualified before submitting their nomination papers. Candidates must be sure they are not disqualified, as they will be asked to sign one of the required nomination papers to confirm exactly that, i.e. they're not disqualified. It is a criminal offence to make a false statement on nomination papers as to the qualification for being elected. So if you are, or your candidate is, in any doubt, they should contact their employer, consult the legislation, or if necessary, take their own independent legal advice. I, as the returning officer, will not be able to confirm or determine whether or not candidates are disqualified. So again, it's your responsibility, the candidate's responsibility at the point of submission. So how do you submit? There are nomination forms to submit, which are parts 1A, 1B, and 1C, and then 2 and 3. and all of those need to be with us no later than 4 p.m. on the 2nd of April. That's an absolute deadline. Those nomination packs can be obtained either from the Borough Council's website, from the Electoral Commission, or you can come and collect them in person during office hours here. So 10 till 4, again, the elections team can provide that to you. For your nomination paper, you need to include your full name and, where applicable, your commonly used name. So commonly used forename and surname are the only names shown on official notices and ballot papers. So if you have a commonly used forename and or surname that's different to your full name, that's what's going to appear on the ballot. Use of the commonly used name section is optional, so that even if you are commonly known by another name, you may leave this blank and stand under your actual name, if that makes sense. For elections after the 2nd of May 2024, so including this election, the Elections Act introduced legislation which permits greater flexibility in the names candidates can put on their nomination paper. If a candidate commonly uses a surname or forename that's different from any other surname or forename they have, or uses one or more of their forenames or surname in a different way from the way they're stated on the nomination form, the candidate may use them as their commonly used name. So further guidance can be found on the Electoral Commission website. So as a reminder, any commonly used name would then appear on the statement of persons nominated and the notice of poll. And also, critically, of course, the ballot paper. So you need to make sure that the description and party name written on the nomination form also matches the description on the certificate of authorization from the nominating officer, or issued by someone authorized to act on their behalf. If you're a candidate for a party, you will also need a party certificate of authorization. And we're happy to pick this up in questions, particularly around commonly used names, if you have any questions on that. For subscribers, the key change here, for those who remember previous systems, is it's no longer 10, it's now 2 subscribers are required. That is a change since the last county council elections in the area. The subscribers must also be registered in the Register of Local Government Electors for the electoral area in question on the last day for the publication of notice of the election. So that must be effectively current information. Candidates will need to check that subscribers are aware of what their personal data will be used for, and that links to GDPR regulations. And we'll put some more information in the chat about this part of the process. Home address. Part 1 of the home address form is as set out there. The key thing here is that the part 1 of the home address form is mandatory and needs to be completed by all candidates. And we will provide a list of all the qualifications that apply in that regard. In part 2 only needs to be completed if candidates wish to withhold their address from the statement of persons nominated in the ballot paper. And it will include the name of the relevant area in which your home address is situated, if your home address is in the UK. For the county elections, the relevant area will be Newcastle under Lyme. So consent to nomination form. Again, this sets out what you're required to complete. If you qualify under more than one qualification, it's good practice to include all of the qualifications in case any become invalid once your candidate, or if your candidate is elected. The candidate's signature must be witnessed and the witness must sign the form. The witness should be the same person whose details you give on your home address form. You must not sign the consent form earlier than 1 calendar month before submitting before the deadline for submitting your nominations papers. So if we go back to the timetable, which we can bring up again as needed, it must not be earlier than 1 month before that. And candidates under no circumstances should sign the form if they're not qualified to stand. And again, that's contained within the Electoral Commission's guidance for candidates and agents. And that's really because at that stage, you will have committed a criminal offence in doing so if you're not qualified to stand. Certificates of authorisation. If the certificate of authorisation states a particular description or the party name to be used, then that must be used by the candidate. So we will do that cross-check to make sure that those align. If the certificate allows the candidate to choose, they must choose either the party name or a description registered with the Electoral Commission. And again, party names and descriptions are listed on the Commission website and must match exactly. No alteration is permitted. So do make sure you check that and make absolutely sure on the Commission website that if you're standing for a party, you're using the correct party information. And again, that must be submitted by 4 o'clock on the 2nd of April. And again, candidates who use a party's description also have the right to use an emblem. You must ask for it yourselves, and there is a form that can be used in the nomination pack to do that. And you should also supply an electronic version of the emblem to the returning officer, to me, if required. Joint candidates. There are normally joint candidates for elections. These are where they've been nominated by more than one party. You may use registered joint descriptions. These must be supported by a certificate of authorisation from each party. You may use one emblem of one of the parties, but there are no joint emblems. So you will have to select in that case. Crucially, submitting your nomination papers. We've covered some of this, but we will just recap. Candidates must submit the nomination form, home address form, and consent to nomination by 4 o'clock on the 2nd of April. And party candidates will also need to submit by the same time a certificate authorising the use of a party name, registered description on the ballot paper, and a written request to use one of the party's emblems on the ballot paper if they wish to do that. All of that has to be with us by 4 p.m. on the 2nd of April. No delays will be accepted, I'm afraid. That is a very hard deadline. So as we've talked through, do take care when you're completing your nomination papers, and you must make sure that the form is completed correctly. So do make sure you take time to complete it and check against the Commission's guidance. You can ask for an informal check to be carried out, for which you'll need to make an appointment with the elections team. Once this has been checked, the candidate can then submit their completed nomination paper at the same time. So you can come in and do that. The rules regarding submission of nomination papers are not yet fully AI, in that they need to be delivered to us by hand. That is the only acceptable method of submission of nomination papers. The nomination form, home address form for elections in this county, and consent to nomination must be delivered by hand and cannot be submitted by any other means. There are no restrictions for these elections on who can deliver the nomination papers, but it should normally be the candidate or agent, or certainly somebody that you trust. Coming on then to those of you who will be acting as election agents. Agents, including a candidate acting as their own agent, can be replaced at any time. If candidates act as their own agent and do not provide an office address, their home address will by default be published on the notice of election agents, even if they've requested for this information to be withheld on their nomination and ballot. So if you don't want your address published as an election agent, you will need an office premise or an alternative premise to do that. And again, nominations of appointment, same day, 4 p.m., same deadline, 4 p.m. on the 2nd of April. And that form is included in the nomination pack. And if you haven't appointed an agent, then you become your own agent by default. So you need to make clear if you intend to use an agent by the same deadline as candidate nominations. Other agents can be appointed to attend postal vote openings, polling stations, and the count on your behalf. You must give notice in writing of any people appointed as polling and counting agents by the 24th of April, again by 4 p.m. The appointment of postal voting agents attending a particular opening session must be made before the start of the session, and we will give 48 hours notice by email. So, access to the electoral register and absent voting lists. Once someone officially becomes a candidate, they're entitled to receive a free copy of the full electoral register and the lists of people voting by post or proxy, known as the absent voters lists, for the division that they are contesting. Digital copies can be requested by email and sent as a password-protected encrypted zip file, meaning the recipient will need to have extraction software installed on their PC, for example, WinZip, and then call the elections office number, which we'll put into the chat, to obtain the password. If a paper copy is required, you'll need to highlight this to contact the elections office either by email or telephone so it can be prepared. An appointment can be arranged so you can come and collect it from us. Registered political parties are also entitled to receive a copy of the full electoral register at any time. Any persons found breaching the restrictions of use of the electoral register could face a fine, and you should refer to the access and supply section of the Commission's guidance for further details. So this is to be used responsibly. Request forms are available in the nominations pack on the Staffordshire County Council Elections 2025 section of our website, or by contacting the elections team by telephone or by email. So, registration. As a candidate, you are uniquely placed to encourage people to register to vote, and you should encourage people to register as soon as possible. It's important that electors understand that polling stations will be safe places to vote, and there are a number of ways that they can vote at elections. They can then vote in person at a polling station, by postal vote, or by appointing someone to vote on their behalf as a proxy. If voters would prefer to vote by post, they should definitely be encouraged to apply early. And the deadline for applying for the election is midnight on the 11th of April, 2025. So we said that voter ID was obviously a new feature since we've held the last county elections. And all electors are now required by law to provide voter ID when attending at a polling station. Voters will be able to present photo ID that is out of date, so long as the photograph is recognised as still a good likeness. The name on the ID should be the same name as the one in the electoral register. If someone forgets or brings the wrong type of ID with them, they will be able to return later with the correct photo ID during the hours of the poll. Staff will check they are happy that it's accepted form of ID, and a private area will be available. Voters who choose to can have their photo ID viewed in private if they wish. And that will really depend on the polling station, whether it's a separate room, an area separated by a privacy screen, or an alternative means to respect that privacy. Applicants requiring a paper copy of the application form can request these to be sent from the elections team. So that's for a voter authority certificate, which is free if they do not have an ID which is on the eligible IDs list. Absent voting. People can only qualify for a postal or proxy for this election if they are or they will be registered in time to vote at the elections, which makes sense. But we've, as with all returning officers and electoral teams, have had issues with this in the past. So as candidates and agents, we would encourage you to, as we've said, make sure that people register early. The deadlines are there set out. Postal votes, we must have received information by 5 p.m. on the 14th of April. Proxy votes, 5 p.m. on the 23rd of April. And emergency proxies, 5 p.m. on the 1st of May. So please do take time to speak to electors about voting by post and proxy and those relevant deadlines. And all applicants, as a reminder, will need to supply their national insurance number as well. So they'll need to make sure they have that to hand. Handing in postal votes. All postal votes are recommended, postal voters rather, are recommended to return their postal vote ballot pack via Royal Mail post box. For those who choose to hand them in at Castle House reception or a polling station, they'll need to complete an additional form, the postal vote return form, upon handing it in, or their postal vote pack will be automatically rejected. So campaigning. These are the do's and don'ts. For that, I know many of you are very seasoned and experienced in this, but worth just going through again. And the advice on campaigning information is ever changing. And so the most up-to-date information can be found on gov.uk or on the Electoral Commission website. And again, I'd highly recommend that you check back on that regularly as you start and go through your campaign. So you do need to comply with planning rules relating to advertising, hoardings and banners, making sure that outdoor posters are removed 2 weeks after the election, whether you win or lose. Do not produce material that looks like a poll card. You mustn't pay people to display your adverts unless that's part of their normal business. And do not handle any postal voting documents that you are not entitled to. And running alongside this is the campaigning code of conduct, which particularly reinforces the changes to absent voting forms and the requirements for identity verification as part of the absent vote applications. The electoral returning officer address for return forms should be clearly provided as the preferred return address rather than any other address. And again, we're going to put some additional information into the chat for you. When it comes to postal voting documents, again, we'll provide a bit of extra information here, but it is an offence for a political campaigner at an election to handle the postal vote of another person unless that person is a close relative or someone for whom they or the organisation which employs or engages them provides regular care. Postal voting documents are a postal ballot paper, a postal voting statement, a declaration of identity, envelopes for returning postal voting documents, and the envelope which contains a postal ballot pack. That all counts as postal voting documentation. When it comes to campaigning outside polling stations, you are allowed to put your messages to voters out on polling day, including in public spaces around polling places, but you must keep access to polling places and the pavements around them clear to allow voters to enter. If you receive complaints or have complaints or allegations yourselves of electoral fraud, a reminder to candidates and agents that you should be prepared to give the police a statement and substantiate any allegations. You should raise the matter with your own election agent and local party where that applies, or with the electoral returning officer or returning officer, so myself or one of my team, if you have any concerns on that at all. You should also cover the standards of behaviour that you expect from your supporters in the environments of the polling place. So please, if you're going to have your supporters out around polling places on polling day, please make sure that they understand the code of conduct as well. Okay, postal vote opening. So postal vote opening will be held at the Jubilee 2 Leisure Centre and will take place on the 23rd of April in Studio 1 at J2. The final opening session will be at 9 o'clock on the 1st of May on voting day at Keele Sports Centre. So we will move the polling station, postal vote rather, operation up to Keele University Sports Centre at that time. And we've asked, as we would normally do, for Royal Mail to do a final sweep at 9:45 on the day of the poll. Candidates and postal vote agents can attend, up to one postal vote agent for each candidate. If you want to attend that, then please get in touch with the elections team, and we ask that you give at least 48 hours notice that you wish to attend. Completed postal votes handed into council premises. Staff assisting the completion of the postal vote return form will allow for a consistent approach for all individuals who want to hand in postal votes. This reduces the risk of return postal votes being rejected or being incorrectly returned. Any local arrangements for the return of postal votes to council offices, such as specific locations, will be set out, and that will cover the accessibility of these locations and or if only certain staff will be handling them. Postal votes must not be dropped off to council offices without completing the return form, as they will be rejected. And in this case, they should be returned by hand to Castle House and not any other location. So, polling day, the big day. General information. As you'll be aware, polling stations will be open and operational from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. The elections office will be open from 6:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. For queries relating to the administration of the election. Voting in the polling stations or in a queue outside the polling station at 10 p.m. Voters. So those already in the polling station or those who are queuing outside can apply for a ballot paper. So at that 10 o'clock cutoff. Postal votes can be handed into polling stations within the division or delivered to us here in Castle House until 10 p.m. Remember to fill in the postal vote return form upon hand-in, as we've just covered. A person in a queue at a polling station at 10, waiting to hand in a postal vote, can do so if they were in the queue before that 10 p.m. cutoff, the same as having a vote themselves. And there will be equipment provided to support accessibility needs and staff on hand to assist. And our polling station clerks and presiding officers are very experienced. They can offer any and all assistance to make that voting as easy as possible for voters who come on the day. Onto the count. The count venue will be Keele University's Sports Centre, as we use for the general election. There will be plenty of parking there for candidates and agents. We'll be doing the verification and count on the night of Thursday, the 1st of May. So it will be an overnight count. We ask that candidates and agents arrive by 10:15, and you'll be issued with a wristband on sign-in. The verification will commence from 10:45 p.m, followed by the count. I won't give you a time of when we'll finish. That will be at the satisfaction of myself and the elections team that we have a valid result. So firstly, as you'll know, we check against ballot paper accounts, the verification. We have the method of counting votes, the opportunity against ballot paper accounts, and I'll probably let Steph deal with some of this in the questions.
Yeah.
If you have a liaison officer for the count, then sorry, if we have a liaison officer, we'll make sure that they are introduced around candidate and agent queries. It's worth noting that nobody has an automatic right of attendance apart from candidates, their agents, and election staff. So that includes councillors, MPs, and others. I, as the returning officer, can appoint such people as guests, and they should apply to me if they wish to attend. Also entitled to attend will be registered observers and electoral commission staff, as well as accredited media. So again, we will coordinate that attendance process. If you know someone who wishes to attend, can you advise me, and we'll consider them for that invitation process. So we're nearly there, folks. We've got through the night of the count, and we're now at the successful candidate stage. After the declaration of results, successful candidates will be issued with an information pack from Staffordshire County Council informing them of the immediate steps that they will be required to take. For example, making contact about signing acceptance of office. We said an important post-election deadline was that of candidate spending. So this is defined as certain expenses used for the purpose of candidate's election during the regulated period. The election agent is responsible in law for the return, but the candidate must also submit a declaration that the return is correct and therefore should also know the rules. While spending returns are made to the proper officer, specific questions on campaign expenditure should not be directed to the proper officer, the returning officer, or the elections team. Candidates and agents should consult the Commission's Candidates and Agents Guide in the first instance, and further information is available at electoralcommission.org.uk. And again, this will be just at the end of this process in the chat and on our website as well. The pence per elector part of the candidate spending limit is based on the number of electors on the electoral register for the division at the last date for publication of the notice of election, and we'll provide further details on that. Returns due 35 calendar days after the results at the latest, and they go to Staffordshire County Council rather than the electoral team here, as it is a county council election. The returns will be made public by Pat Flaherty, the returning officer. A sample of returns may be reviewed by the Electoral Commission as standard practice. Failure to submit a spending return is a criminal offence, and that's enforceable by the police. And no spending will be reimbursed. So you can't claim that back from the council or the Electoral Commission. The rules simply restrict how much can be spent. So finally, some key contacts. And again, we'll make sure this is submitted with the pack and the recording. The Elections Office here in Newcastle, Staffordshire Highways, Staffordshire Police, the single point of contact in the Specialist Crime Directorate, to report any concerns or seek any advice. And finally, the Electoral Commission itself. So thank you for bearing with us as we went through that information, all really key and important information. And as you'll have picked up, some key changes there since the Act was brought in 2022.